Welcome to the Low Post. I'm Eric Stark, joined by my co-host, sports writer for the Sunday News, Mike Gross, and we've got a lot of great topics this week, so let's get right into it, Mike. ESPN did a segment Sunday on their Outside the Line show about Penn State and about some of the situations that have been going on there. Since 2002, Mike, 46 players have been arrested on 163 counts. 27 of the players have been found guilty of something up there, and they sort of did a hunt. Joe Paterno called it a witch hunt. They did a story that didn't make Penn State look too good. What are your thoughts as you saw the story?
I did watch it, and I watched it actually a couple times because I knew I was going to write and talk about it. And ESPN kind of went with the premise that in the late 90s when Penn State was losing, they started to lower their standards in terms of character for recruiting, bringing all kind of kids in there, and that's what's created all these problems. They got Michael Haynes, who was a terrific defensive player up there, to sort of confirm that. I guarantee you could have had 15, 20, 30 former Penn State players who would vehemently disagree with that. And I've read some things where some guys have challenged that, in the sense that there's always been rough house behavior up there. There's always been borderline criminal, college stuff where guys are getting drunk and beating the crap out of each other, and that's nothing new. And the way it's handled is probably what's different, rather than the amount of it.
You know, I'm looking at, since the last 5 years, I'm looking at Penn State and their standards. Joe Paterno has still got a great graduation rate. In the last 5 years, measured by the NCAA standards, 3 times they've had the highest number of graduation, including the most recent year where they exceeded the average, which is 64%, Mike. Penn State exceeded it by 19 points. So, if he's bringing in guys that are less than great characters, he's still graduating
somehow
these guys.
Getting them through school. I don't think he's bringing in guys of less character.
I don't think so either.
Here's what I think is different. And years ago, back in the day, Joe essentially had the state college and campus police departments in his pocket. And he has, and this is not me talking, he has essentially acknowledged this over the years. So years ago when the cops went out and grabbed the kid who was being a knucklehead, they called Joe and said, hey, we got him. They brought him to Joe's house, and Joe figured out how to discipline him. Made him stay there overnight and get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and run or something like that, and suspended him for a certain amount of time, whatever. But the difference then was no formal arrest, no police report of any kind, and therefore no media attention, no public knowledge.
Keep it in the family.
That's what's different today than then. And I'm not saying that's better or worse. I mean, obviously, back then, how is Joe Paterno, if he's going to be judge and jury, how is he going to deal with, for example, sexual assault? I mean, there's no way he can find a way to properly deal with that. I mean, obviously, legitimate criminal justice system would do a better job than Joe could possibly do with something like that. But that's what's changed. And a couple things about that Paterno said that really freaked me out a little bit. Of course, they're very aggressive. They have to be aggressive to play in front of 110,000 people. Well, essentially what you're saying, Joe, is of course they're savages. They're football players. I mean, come on. I thought that was a little disturbing. And also that vehement denial by Joe that his football program has tried to intervene with the judicial affairs people at Penn State to kind of lessen the fines and lessen the penalties and lessen the discipline. And Graham Spanier, the president of Penn State, kind of half confirmed that there has been that kind of interference with judicial affairs.
And we talked about this before we started taping, Mike. I honestly think Paterno does not have anything involved with that. Maybe somebody in his program does. Another one of the coaches was involved, somebody else with an AD or an athletic department. But I honestly think he had nothing to do with that, and that's why he can make those kind of claims. It just doesn't seem like him. Because they'd also said in that report that there was a text message involved. And I don't see Joe Paterno doing text messages, do you?
Yeah, Joe Paterno is not doing any text messaging. I mean, he doesn't even have a computer, and he didn't even know he had email until fairly recently. So he's not doing the text messaging, but that doesn't mean the text messaging isn't happening.
It wasn't sent out by somebody else. He's not on campus as much as he used to be as well. I don't know if he's as aware of what's going on with his own program as he used to be, and I think that could be part of the problem with this. That, he's turning a blind eye. He's just not seeing what's going on at times, and I think things are happening around him he's just not aware of as well.
And also the isolation, I think, probably makes his relationship with the administration and maybe even with these judicial affairs people more distant, colder, and therefore maybe more adversarial.
So it didn't paint Penn State in a great light, though, Mike, did it?
It did not. It did not. Penn and I think Joe's sort of dismissing it as a witch hunt. It didn't help either. But I had, as I said earlier, I had some problems with ESPN kind of going in with a preconceived notion and then kind of shoving it home, which is not what. It's not really journalism. It's not really reporting.
And I'm going to go back to my comment before. If these guys were such bad characters, they wouldn't be graduating. And I'm looking at what happens at other programs. I wish they would have shown this report. What's happens at Miami and Nebraska? I'm looking at Lawrence Phillips or a Florida State, and
it's fair to say that they could have compared and contrast Penn State with other programs. I think that's a fair call. Yeah.
Yeah, talking about a fair call. Is Brett Favre getting the fair call here with what's going on with him? This guy's going to the Hall of Fame. He's a sure Hall of Famer who had an all-pro season last year, and yet Ted Thompson, the general manager, and Mike McCarthy of the Packers, the coach, don't want him in there. They've said Aaron Rodgers is our starting quarterback. Are they idiots?
I don't think they are idiots. I think what they've done. This is my sense of it, and I'm not close to this situation, so I could be wrong about this. But I thought all along that what the people who run the Packers needed to do was take the temperature of the Packers locker room, find out what the players want. And I've seen enough now and read enough now to think that the Packers kind of feel like enough is enough. The Packers players I'm talking about feel like enough is enough with Brett Favre, feel like Aaron Rodgers is our guy. As you know, Starkey, quarterback in the NFL, starting quarterback in the NFL, particularly in a market that's insane about their NFL team, as Green Bay certainly is,
sure.
There's almost political aspects to that job. How the quarterback is perceived by his teammates, by his coaches, by the media, and by the fans is part of the job of being a quarterback. And I almost sense I would have thought differently 2-3 weeks ago, but my sense now is that all of that stuff, all of that perception has kind of turned away from Brett Favre and toward Aaron Rodgers, and I think the Packers are right to kind of take that temperature and act accordingly.
I hope they did take the temperature and act accordingly. I hope this is not just the general manager who drafted Aaron Rodgers 4 or 5 years ago saying that I want this guy in there now, it's time to move on.
But you suspect that's what it is, don't you?
I suspect that's what it is. I gave him a mulligan last year because some of those players he drafted actually did well. But this guy has wanted Brett Favre out since the beginning. He's not made it encouraging for Brett to stay. And even this head coach, until last year when they made the championship, had made some really dumb decisions and play calls in the past that a lot of people in Green Bay have been frustrated about. So, I don't think these guys, I think you put the two heads together, you might get one brain.
Oh, man. It's a harsh indictment by some.
I still don't feel that your best chances of winning, this was a team that was in overtime, the NFC Championship game. They were a heartbeat away from going to the Super Bowl. Needs to have a quarterback that's got 2 starts and it gets hurt. Here's the scenario I think. They're going to eventually trade him for like a 2nd or 3rd round pick and get this over with. The circus ends. It was a guy in training camp in Green Bay yesterday, Michael Stills. So, they are playing this circus atmosphere up there.
All right.
He will get traded, and within 2 to 3 weeks, Aaron Rodgers will get hurt because he has a history of injuries. Well, and then you're going to wish you had Brett Favre still.
Okay, but don't you think Favre is kind of forcing the Packers into that situation? Whereas if we could all move on, then maybe the Packers would have a backup in place. I think that Favre is at least equally complicit in creating this very, very rock versus a hard place situation.
I agree he did force the issue a little bit, but he looked at if I don't force the issue, they can say I wasn't serious. They can fine me if I don't come in. He has until week 6 of the season. He actually could have sat around and waited. And like I said, if he would have sat around and waited, Aaron Rodgers would get hurt before we get to week 6, and they would call Favre, and Favre could be back in there starting again, I felt.
So how's it going to play out?
How's it going to play out?
You're closer to this than I am. How do you think it's going to play out?
He's going to get traded. I think the best spot for him is probably Tampa Bay, just based on John Gruden was a former assistant coach. He knows Favre. He's a former assistant coach in Green Bay. I think he can pick up a system pretty quick. Favre wants to press the issue now also because he needs to go in and learn a new system. And the players need to learn how to play with him, too. You can't keep waiting on this. A team, they need to get this done the next week.
One of the things that I heard that indicates that they are trying to push him out the door is supposedly they granted Tampa Bay permission to talk to Favre, even though Tampa Bay didn't ask for it.
Yeah.
Didn't ask for it, and Tampa Bay says that they have not done so. They have not talked to him yet.
Feel free to marry my daughter, even though you didn't ask about it.
There you go.
Yeah, I think Kansas City would be another great spot for him. That Brady Coyle is there now, and he struggled last year. But I'll tell you what, Kansas City's got a nice young talent there that would be good for him. But I think Tampa Bay is going to be the spot he winds up.
And I think, again, the system there will be very amenable to him. Yeah.
Sure. Hit me up with the stat of the week, Mike, will you?
The stat of the week. Okay, well, the audience has come to love it, and with good reason. Here's Starkey with this week's stat of the week.
16. The amount of losing seasons for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, why are we bringing up the Pittsburgh Pirates? Other than
that they suck.
Yeah, other than Helen Adams here in our own staff. Who else follows the Pittsburgh Pirates around here? Nobody. But I think it's very intriguing that they made a trade with the Yankees where they basically gave away two great players again. And they're pretty much destined for the 16th consecutive losing season, going back to 1992, folks, when they won 96 games. Back when Barry Bonds was skinny, Mike.
Right.
That was the last time they won. They had
that's
Mike LaValliere, catcher, and Sid Bream from Carlisle. And
there you go.
Good players back then. Well, they haven't won since, and they're about to tie a record. Goes back to 1933 through 48 with the Philadelphia Phillies. Get that, the Phillies. Most consecutive losing seasons by a team. And it made me think with the baseball trade deadline coming this Thursday. We tape on a Tuesday, but the deadline's coming fast on us here. That one, I think they should move the deadline back because there's so many teams that are still active in baseball. But the big thing is there should be a salary cap in baseball. Why can the Yankees come in and fleece the Pirates and get two good players again? They got Xavier Nady and also a left-handed reliever. And the Red Sox all can do it too because they've got so much money. The Yankees are about to go out and get Jared Washburn from the Mariners. The only reason why they're not going to have to give the Mariners any players, basically, they're going to give them some young, single-way player out of this because Seattle wants to get rid of this huge contract. So because the Yankees can afford to take on the big deals, they continually make runs at the playoffs. I think the Red Sox and Yankees are going to beat the Tampa Rays in that division because the Rays can't compete with these salaries of these big teams. And I'm looking at the Pirates, the Kansas City Royals, these teams, Mike, that have been bad for a long time and will stay bad because
I disagree with you a little bit about this, Starkey. I think
you're allowed.
I think that
show's about.
Although this is certainly there was a long period of time when the financial inequities in baseball created a huge problem with competitive balance. The revenue sharing that's going on now has manifested itself in ways that allow small market teams to compete. Milwaukee has been a player in the market. The Minnesota Twins have been not by spending tons of money, but by being smart. And the salary structure of baseball has more to do with seniority than it does with how good a player you are. I mean, that's the way it's set up now. The best pitcher in baseball is Tim Lincecum, making $400,000 a year.
Well, that's because of the structure of the player, what the players' contracts are right now with arbitration and so forth. Correct.
So,
right.
Well, but that's because of the collective bargaining agreement that currently exists. But another part of that collective bargaining agreement is revenue sharing, which I think has allowed smaller market teams to compete and medium market teams to compete. The Cleveland Indians are a very middle of the road team in terms of salary. We're one game away from the World Series last year.
But they were competitive in the early 90s when they had Jim Thome and those guys were having a good farm system and so forth. I look at Kansas City, you say about competitive, and Kansas City has taken some of this revenue sharing. They love that. They get the money from the Yankees every year. They've taken that money and gone out and signed free agents.
Gil Mesh.
Guys like that. Yeah.
The moral of that anecdote, Rupee, is the Kansas City Royals are dumb.
Okay,
and not that they're financially strapped.
Maybe that's the other factor. Maybe the Pirates and the Royals, these teams, are dumb, but because I'm just struggling that competing and having a chance to actually win are two different things here, and these teams have not had a chance to actually win a division.
Well, I would quarrel with the word "have a chance." I think that has changed with the last collective bargaining.
Okay, and maybe it is dumb because Milwaukee is playing well and they've made some great choices, and Minnesota is a great example. So maybe it is about getting the right leadership in there to make the right decisions too on what to do.
Well, certainly that has a big part of it. And again, we talk about seniority having so much to do with salaries. The reason why a lot of teams have big numbers is because they have older players, because the way it's set up now. With the eligibility for arbitration, et cetera. We've been through this with Ryan Howard is an excellent illustration of that. So I think you have a better chance to win now than at any time in the last 15, 20 years if you are not one of the richer teams.
We'll see on that, folks. Hey, we've enjoyed talking with you guys. Until next week, I'm Eric Stark for Mike Rose and our producer Paul Franz. We'll see you again from the Low Post.